turn tonight to John chapter 9. You know, I thought about this morning. I was finding lessons to preach after 43 years is not an easy thing. It would be okay if I was going somewhere different every week. I'd just get me about 5 real good ones and I'd learn so well and I had them memorized front to back. But there would be no growth in that for me or no growth in that for you. But when it's the same folks over and over again, I can't find anything fresh. I'm not going to promise you something fresh and different tonight, but we're going to look at some things we've already looked at. And maybe perhaps as we look at them, we'll take a little different approach to it, look at it from a different angle, or we might see something that we never noticed before. Because I've always noticed when you're studying the Bible, you can go back over something, and you can go back over something, you can go back over something, you're going to see something brand new. Not that it's new, it's been there all along. But you're going to see something that you missed before, and you never thought about taking that and making an application in the way that God intended. You might have got the primary meaning. There might be a secondary, there might be a third or a fourth thing that we need to notice. So we're going to go to John chapter 9. We're going to read verses 1 through 11 together for a lesson text tonight. And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither hath this man sinned nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. And as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made a clay of the spittle. And he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay and said unto him, Go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. He went his way therefore and washed and came seeing. The neighbors therefore, and they which before had seen him that he was blind, said, Is not this he that sat and begged? Some said, This is he. Others said, He is like him. But he said, I am he. Therefore said they unto him, How were thine eyes opened? And he answered and said, A man that is called Jesus made clay and anointed mine eyes, and said unto me, Go to the pool of Siloam and wash. I went and washed, and I received sight. A portion of the song Amazing Grace has these words, Was blind, but now I see. When you think about all the things that could befall you in the course of life, my hearing has gotten horrible, and so occasionally Tammy has to tell me you're too loud, you're talking too loud. And she does that to help me to keep from hurting y'all's ears. But I get in a room and I can say something, and there'll be 100 people in there. I see everybody turn and look my way. I know then the volume's up too high. Or you see somebody go when you say something. But that's terrible. I hate it. There's nothing I can do about it. It is what it is. But I can't imagine that being anything compared to the fact that one day you wake up and you cannot see, to be blind. Imagine how dark the world would be if you were blind. And I think the 5th grade, or maybe the 6th grade, it had been the 5th, because I was at Western in the 6th, we went to the planetarium in Shreveport. And they got us in there, and we're sitting in these chairs, and they're showing you all these things up on this sky. If you've ever been to one, you know what it's about. And they wanted to let us see what the darkest dark there is that they knew of at that time out in the universe. And so they darkened that building. And I remember it being so dark as I sat there that I literally put my hands right here, and I could not tell they were there. You could not see anything. Nothing at all. And it made me think then how horrible it would be to be blind. And then we turn and we read in the book of Exodus about the plague of darkness in Egypt. Let's go there for just a minute. We're just going to read a couple of verses just to get our mind on what we're talking about in Exodus chapter 10. And let's go all the way down to verse 21. And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. And Moses stretched forth his hand toward the heaven, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. They saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days, but all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. It's a couple of neat verses, don't you think? It's a darkness, and it's so dark that the Bible describes it as a darkness which may be felt. It's a thick darkness. It's felt. It's not just seen, but it's so dark that you can feel the depth of it. And yet at the same time, darkness brings what? It brings a vast emptiness. Because you can't see anything. There's an emptiness there, and yet it was so dark that it could be felt. It was firm. It was empty, and yet at the same time, it was firm. That means it would be overwhelming, that you could feel it. And it would strike within you a great amount of fear. They saw nothing, it said. Not even one another for 3 days. And none rose from his own bed for 3 days. In such a blindness, imagine where your mind would go. I mean, it would have to take you on the brink of being insane. And the amount of chaos that would be going in your mind, and it would be going round and round and round, and you're simply trapped in that chaos because you can't do anything. You can't get up and move. You can't do anything but simply lay there. And any choice that you might decide to make would be a fool's errand. It'd be misguided. Because every step you took is a misstep. You can't see, and you're going to step on something. But the children of Israel had light in all their dwellings. Now, what caused this darkness? Well, you'd say, well, duh, God told Moses to make it light. It's obvious. I mean, make it dark. God caused the darkness, but what really caused it? The real cause was the fact that they were a rebellious people. God is sending all these plagues upon the Egyptians, and they refuse to yield. It's their rebellious nature. It's the rebellious nature of sin. Because Egypt continued to reject and reject and reject and reject everything that God brought their way. And it started with their leader, Pharaoh. Who is God that I should obey him? That's what he said when Moses told him to let the people go. He said, who is God that I should obey him? That's the mindset of somebody in sin. When they're so deeply ingrained in sin, the darkness overwhelms them, and they say to themselves, who is God that I should obey him? But why could Israel see? Because they hearkened. They were willing to yield to the command of God. And so because God's presence is there, there's light. And it says that all of Israel could see. The children of Israel had light in all their dwellings. So nothing changed for them during the course of these 3 days. But they had made up their mind to be guided by the light that only God can provide. Sin is a dark place. It's a place filled with the darkness of no hope. It's a place filled with the darkness of no vision, because you don't have a future in sin. Your future is limited. You say, people continue to live every day in sin, but your future is limited to right here and right now. Your tomorrow, none of our tomorrows are guaranteed, but the outcome of our tomorrow, when we live for God, is absolute. So in sin, you have right here and right now. You have no tomorrow. Because all that waits you is an even deeper and darker, a darkness that can be felt Because you're not prepared. You have no future. Can you feel the darkness? If we could feel the darkness, we'd make a change in our lives. The Egyptians felt the dark. In Proverbs chapter 29, the wise man said, where there is no wisdom, or no vision, rather, the people perish. So, without vision, we're ultimately going to perish. Now, let's go back to the man of our story. He's a man blind since birth. So he had never been able to see. He had lived a life in darkness. He's never seen the sun rise. He's never seen the sunset. He's never seen a bird fly. He's never seen, only heard the sounds of the animals around him. He's not been able to see all the beautiful things that nature provides. He's never seen his father's face. He's never seen his mother's face. He's never seen his family. He's never seen his friends. But he is indeed alone in the darkness. But he hadn't forgotten about God. Now, imagine. Imagine having never seen God. I'm talking about from the spiritual standpoint. We're not going to see him with the physical eye during the course of this life. But imagine having never seen God with the spiritual eye. And imagine how dark that night is. Because you've taken God out of the equation. We would not see God with the physical eye because God is a spirit. John 4 and verse 24. And no man has seen God at any time, John 1 and verse 18. But there are those who are able to see God. They are the children of light. They are the ones who have reached out and embraced the gospel of Jesus Christ. They are the ones who are able to see God in that glorious light that envelops us when we belong to Him. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Those who choose to live for God are covered with that glorious light. Their minds, their soul is illuminated with a confidence knowing that they are walking with God. And more importantly, knowing that God is walking with them. So you see, we really can see God. Just not with the physical eye. He can only be seen with the eye of faith. And yet the eye of faith is more powerful than the physical eye. Because the physical eye is only able to see those things which are temporal. Those things which pass away. But to see God with the spiritual eye, the eye of faith, is to see things that are eternal. We're able to go in our minds and in our thoughts to a place called heaven. We're able to go in our minds and in our hearts to a place called forgiveness. We're able to go in our minds and in our heart to a place where we can put the world of sin that throughout our lives plagues us all totally behind us. And we can do as Paul said, forgetting those things which are behind. Forgetting that which is past. The Hebrew writer said, laying aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. There's the eye of faith. Forgetting those things which are past, I press on toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God God, which is in Christ Jesus, that which can be seen, not with the physical eye, but with the spiritual eye. The eye of faith looks beyond, and it prepares for living then by living now. How we live now makes a difference. What I do today matters. It matters not only for me, but it also matters for all those that are entrusted in my care. It matters for all those that I have the opportunity to touch with the confidence that I have in the faith that I have, in the vision that I have of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm able to see beyond here and now. And I'm able, through that eye of faith, to use that wonderful power, that opportunity that comes our way of persuasion in reaching out to those around me. By faith, His touch, His power fills us with the strength, with the promise, with the hope, with the ability to move beyond and to go forward. In John chapter 12, when it was declared that they had found Jesus, the simple response was about Jesus, come and see, verses 20 through 23. Would we see Jesus? Would you use the eye of faith tonight? And would you allow yourself with the eye of faith to see Jesus? This man saw Jesus. He knew He was coming. He waited for His coming. He watched for it, even without seeing Him. Because he had the confidence when Jesus told him to go and wash, He had faith. But he was blind and could now see, because Jesus saw him. The disciples oftentimes question some hard things hard to be understood. In our text here, the question is asked, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Every sin has a consequence. Sometimes there are personal consequences. There are things that I have to suffer with. There are memories that I have that are hard for me to get past because of my sin. It might be something perhaps that nobody knows but me and God. And it's hard sometimes for us to get past the consequences of our sin. We didn't do this, we didn't do that. We did this, we did that. That burden will always be there, but we can put it behind us with the eye of faith. We can see beyond. Some sins have consequences that affect those around us. The drunk that's in a car wreck. And usually when they walk away without a scratch. And some poor soul or some poor family that was doing absolutely nothing wrong but living their life, may have been even on the way to worship somewhere, has now been maimed or maybe even killed because of the irresponsible actions of somebody who cared only for themselves. You can ride down the streets of Jonesboro, and you can watch as you drive by, and you can see people even on the streets of Jonesboro, and you're instantly able to see without a shadow of doubt their bodies have been abused by the lifestyle that they've lived. They're ravaged by the sin that they've been a part of their entire lives. This is not that. Sickness disease, birth infirmities, or a consequence of sin. This man did not sin, he was simply blind. And it's a consequence of the promise that God made to Adam and Eve, that in the day you eat thereof, thou shalt surely die. And so every one of us suffers physical frailties as a result of sin, not personal sin. God would have had man stay in the Garden of Eden. It was man who chose to leave. Sin corrupted that. That was a consequence of the choice of sin and doubt. They doubted God. But heaven, through the eye of faith, takes all of that away. And heaven replaces all these corruptible things with that which is incorruptible. Jesus gave him sight. What a beautiful idea. What a beautiful story. Note the reaction. The neighbors therefore, and they which before had seen that he was blind, said, Is not this he that sat and begged? And so the works of Jesus and the words of Jesus, as they always do, gather attention. We should listen. We ought to hear. Some said, This is he. Others said, He's like him. But it was him. But as with our lives today, some reject. Why in the world would somebody reject the obvious? He said, I'm he. They treated him as if he didn't even know who he was. He said, I am he. And he said, a man that is called Jesus made clay and anointed mine eyes and said unto me, Go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And I went and washed, and I received sight. He obeyed because he was excited at the promise of seeing, finally being able to look. But the spiritually blind hold a different view. Let's go on down in our text to John, in John chapter 9. Let's go down to verse 13. They brought to the Pharisees him that aforetime was blind, and it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then again the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight, and he said unto them, He put clay upon mine eyes, and I washed, and I do see. Therefore some of the Pharisees, this man is not of God, because he keepeth not the Sabbath day. Others said, How can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And there was a division among them. And they said unto the blind man again, What sayest thou of him that he hath opened thine eyes? And he said, He is a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight, until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. And they asked them, saying, Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then doth he now see? And his parents answered them and said, We know that this is our son, and he was born blind, but by what means he seeth now we know not. Or who hath opened his eyes we know not. He is of age, ask him, he shall speak for himself. These words spake the parents because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he should be put out of the synagogue. Therefore said his parents, He is of age, ask him. Then again called they the man that was blind, and said unto him, Give God the praise, we know that this man is a sinner. He answered and said, Whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, now I see. They said to him again, What did he to thee? How opened he thine eyes? He answered them, I have told you already, you do not hear. Wherefore would ye hear it again? Will you also be his disciples? Then they reviled and said, Thou art his disciple, but we are Moses' disciple. The harsh approach. They are divided. They are arguing amongst one another. They were prejudiced, and yet it was so hard for them to ignore the very obvious. It reminds me of the Apostle Paul when he was Saul of Tarsus. And Jesus appeared to him on the Damascus road, and Saul said, Who art thou, Lord? And he said, I'm Jesus whom thou persecutest. And he said, It's hard for thee to kick against the pricks. In other words, Saul, everything I've done, everything that's been preached about me should be so obvious to you that you know that I am who they say that I am. And these Jews were that same mindset. But prejudice is the best way for us to go. We've already made up our mind. It'll save us a lot of time. And it blinds us from seeing the truth. And he is cast from the synagogue. That's what their fear was. And he is. Reading on, beginning in verse 29. We know that God spake unto Moses, As for this fellow, we know not from whence he is. The man answered and said unto them, Why, herein is a marvelous thing, that ye know not from whence he is, and yet he hath opened mine eye. And we know that God heareth not sinners, but if any man is a worshiper of God and doeth his will, him he heareth. Since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened the eyes of one that is blind? If this man were not of God, he could do nothing. They answered and said unto him, Thou wast altogether born in sins, and dost thou teach us? And they cast him out. Now it seems he can see, but now he's alone. The price is very simple for following Jesus. Whatever it costs, it's worth it. It's worth it whatever it costs me. If it means I have to lose my friends, it's worth the cost. If it means I have to be alienated from my family, it's worth the cost. If it costs me my job to be a Christian, it's worth the cost. No matter what the price. Because Jesus asked this question, what is a man profited if he should gain the whole world and lose his own soul? And what would a man give in exchange for his soul? He's born physically blind. Sin blinds us all spiritually. He had no choice in the matter. But us, well, we're blind by choice. The Bible says in Romans 3 and verse 23, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. But we don't have to stay there. We don't have to remain blind. Only through Jesus can the vision be gained which leads to eternal life. But all we have to do is reach out and embrace it. This man was told to go wash and see. God says to us to simply wash and be set free. God says to us to simply obey and leave behind the darkness of this world and approach our lives in a brand new, different light, a spiritual light. So why not come and see? Sin is a great darkness, like that darkness of Egypt. It's a darkness you can feel, and it penetrates to the deepest part of our being. It penetrates our soul. And once it penetrates our soul, it blinds us. And alone and left in our own mindset, following the deceitfulness of the world, there is no ability within us to find a direction that will set us free. And there is within us no sense of true purpose. And there is within us no sense of real joy. There is within us no real peace of mind. And within us there is not the ability to see the things which matter the most. We lose sight of life itself in such a way that we could never find it again alone. So why not? Why not simply come to Jesus and see? Why grope alone in the dark? When Jesus gives us the light to see by. In closing, let me remind you of this. Hell is defined in the Bible as being a place of outer darkness. There's a darkness that can be felt. And yet, it is a place filled with remorse, but with no opportunity to see any outcome of change. Imagine how terrible that is. What a terrible place that would be, a place where I cannot change. I cannot change the outcome of my decision. I cannot change the outcome of my location. That's why it's essential that you and I decide here and now what we're going to do with the gospel. If you'd have a need in any way tonight to respond to the invitation, you can come down. Father, together we stand and sing and encourage.